They say some wounds leave scars that never heal, but F's story began long before her scars, in a small village where dreams bloomed like wildflowers in spring. In a quaint village nestled among rolling hills, where everyone knew each other by name and life moved at the gentle pace of seasons, there lived a remarkable young girl named F. Her presence was like a ray of sunshine, lighting up the dusty path she walked each day to school, her bright eyes full of dreams bigger than the village itself. F wasn't just beautiful on the outside. With her graceful movements and warm smile, she possessed a brilliant mind that set her apart from her peers. Every year when the school held its annual awards ceremony, F's name would echo through the assembly hall again and again. Mathematics? F would step forward, accepting the prize with a shy smile. Literature? There she was again, clutching another certificate. Science? The teachers didn't even have to look at their list anymore. They knew F would be the one walking up to receive the honor. Her parents' faces would beam with pride during these ceremonies, their eyes glistening with happy tears as they watched their daughter excel. Her father, a humble farmer with weathered hands and a gentle heart, would sit straight backed in his chair, trying to maintain his composure while his chest swelled with joy. Her mother, who sold vegetables in the local market, would grasp her husband's hand tightly, whispering, "That's our girl, that's our precious F." But it wasn't just the academic achievements that made F special. In the evenings, as the family sat together on their small porch, F would share her dreams with her parents. "Mama, Papa," she would say, her eyes sparkling with excitement, "one day I'm going to work in one of those tall buildings in the city. I'll wear smart clothes and carry a briefcase like the bankers we see in magazines. I'll help people manage their money and make wise decisions." Her parents would exchange knowing glances, amazed at their daughter's clear vision of her future. The villagers would often stop by their house, seeking F's help with reading important documents or solving mathematical problems. She never turned anyone away, patiently explaining complex concepts in simple terms. "That girl," the village elders would say, nodding wisely, "she's going places. Mark our words." F's daily routine was a testament to her dedication. She would wake before dawn, help her mother with household chores, and then walk to school with her books clutched to her chest, each step taking her closer to her dreams. In the evenings, while other children played in the village square, F could be found at her small desk by the window, diligently studying by lamplight. Life was simple but full of hope in those days. The family might not have had much in terms of material wealth, but they were rich in love, dreams, and the promise of a bright future. F's laughter would ring through their modest home, mixing with the aroma of her mother's cooking and the sound of her father's humming. None of them could have imagined how drastically their lives would change, or that these precious moments of happiness were soon to become cherished memories of a time that would never return. The day everything changed started like any other. F's parents had kissed her goodbye, promising to return before sunset from their visit to the neighboring village. Her mother had left a pot of soup simmering on the stove, and her father had reminded her to finish her homework. F had waved them off with a smile, never imagining it would be the last time she would see them alive. The sun had begun to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, when whispers began spreading through the village. There had been an accident on the narrow road between the villages, a terrible one. F was sitting on her porch, textbook open on her lap, when she saw the village elder approaching with a grave expression. Behind him, a group of women walked slowly, their faces etched with sorrow. In that moment, before any words were spoken, F knew. Her world shattered with the elder's gentle words, "Your parents. They didn't make it." The days that followed passed in a blur of tears and tradition. The village came together as one, organizing a proper burial that honored F's parents. Women cooked, men dug the graves, and children gathered flowers. The air filled with solemn songs and prayers, the rhythmic beating of drums, and the wailing of mourners. F stood through it all like a statue, her young face frozen in disbelief, her heart refusing to accept that the two people who had been her whole world were gone forever. When school resumed, F found herself sitting in the same classroom where she had once shone so brightly, but everything felt different. The mathematical equations that had once been clear as day now swam before her eyes, meaningless symbols on a white page. Literature passages that had once transported her to magical worlds now seemed like hollow words. Her hand, which had once shot up eagerly to answer every question, remained limp in her lap. Her teachers noticed the change. The spark in her eyes had dimmed, replaced by a distant, haunted look. Her perfect grades began to slip, first slightly, then dramatically. Papers that would have once earned her highest marks now came back with concerned notes from her teachers. F, is everything all right? They would ask, though they knew the answer. Yet, despite her crushing grief, F continued to attend school. Each morning she would force herself out of her empty house, walking the same path she had once traveled with a spring in her step. Now her feet dragged, heavy with the weight of her loss. Sometimes she would stop at the spot where she used to wait for her father to wave goodbye as he headed to his farm. The memory so vivid it brought fresh tears to her eyes. The other students didn't know how to act around her. Some tried to help, offering notes or whispered explanations during lessons. Others avoided her, uncomfortable with her grief. F barely noticed either response, lost in her own world of pain and memories. The dreams of becoming a banker that had once burned so brightly now seemed like distant stars, barely visible through the dark clouds of her sorrow. The morning the youth corps members arrived brought a burst of energy to the sleepy village school. Students crowded around classroom windows, whispering excitedly as 4 young teachers in crisp white and khaki uniforms walked through the front gate. These new teachers were different from the old ones. They were young, vibrant, and carried themselves with the confident air of city dwellers. The classroom buzzed with excitement as students straightened their uniforms and dusted off their desks, eager to impress their new instructors. Girls giggled behind their hands, admiring the handsome male corps members, while boys sat up straighter, hoping to catch the attention of the female corps member. The air was electric with possibility and change. But in the back corner of the classroom, F remained unchanged. While her classmates craned their necks for a better view, she kept her eyes fixed on her desk, her thoughts far away with memories of happier times. The excitement around her felt distant, like watching a celebration through a thick pane of glass. She barely looked up when the corps members introduced themselves, their names washing over her like meaningless sounds. Among the new teachers was corps member Val, assigned to teach mathematics. Unlike the others who saw a classroom full of eager faces, Val noticed the quiet girl in the corner who never smiled. During lessons, while other students competed to answer questions, F sat silently, her blank notebook a stark contrast to her formerly meticulous notes. One afternoon, after watching F struggle through another lesson, Val asked her to stay behind. The classroom had emptied, leaving them alone in the golden light of late afternoon. F, he said gently, pulling up a chair beside her desk. I've seen your previous test scores. You used to be the best in mathematics. What changed? For a long moment, F said nothing, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on her desk. Then, unexpectedly, tears began falling onto her notebook, creating dark circles on the empty page. Through broken sobs, she told him about her parents, about the accident, about how numbers and formulas had lost all meaning since that day. Val listened with genuine concern, his heart aching for this young girl who had lost so much. When she finished speaking, he made a decision. I can help you, he said softly. We can start with the basics again, step by step. Would you like that? To his surprise, F nodded slightly. It was the first time she had shown interest in anything school-related in months. From that day forward, Val began staying after school to tutor F. He was patient, breaking down complex problems into manageable pieces, celebrating even her smallest victories. Sometimes they would just talk about her dreams of becoming a banker, about her memories of her parents, about her fears for the future. Gradually, under Val's careful guidance, F began to emerge from her shell. The other corps members noticed the special attention Val gave her, but they saw it differently. While Val saw a wounded soul in need of healing, they saw something else entirely, something that would soon lead to devastating consequences. I'll write about this section focusing on the emotional impact and consequences while keeping the tone appropriate. The shadows began to lengthen around F's story when the other corps members Kunal, Faye, and Dio started paying unwanted attention to her progress. They would watch from their staff room as F walked to Val's house for her tutoring sessions, their eyes following her path with unsettling interest. One evening, after F had left her lesson, the 3 men cornered Val outside his quarters. The conversation started casually enough, but quickly took a dark turn. "We see how you're helping the girl," Connor said, a strange smile playing on his lips. "Why not share your good fortune with your fellow corp members?" Val's face hardened as he understood their implication. "F is my student," he said firmly, his voice tight with anger. "She's been through enough tragedy. She comes here to study, nothing more. Stay away from her." But the three men just laughed, exchanging knowing looks that made Val's blood run cold. From that day forward, Val became even more protective of F. He made sure she never walked home alone after their lessons, and he kept a watchful eye whenever the other corps members were nearby. But he couldn't be there all the time, and the three men were patient, waiting for their opportunity. That opportunity came on a day when Val had been called away for an emergency meeting at the local government office. The three men had carefully planned for this moment, knowing F would come for her regular tutoring session. When she knocked on Val's door, they were ready. "Val had to step out," Connor said smoothly, opening the door. "He asked us to let you wait inside until he returns." F hesitated at the threshold, but these were teachers she saw every day at school. Surely she was safe with them. What happened next would haunt the village for years to come. The betrayal of trust, the violence of their actions, the shattering of a young girl's spirit, it was a dark stain that would never fully wash away. When they finally left, F lay broken and traumatized, her world once again torn apart by cruelty she didn't deserve. Hours later, when Val returned and found out what had happened, his anguish and rage echoed through the corps members' quarters, but it was too late. The damage was done. The three men acted as if nothing had happened, going about their duties with smug satisfaction, believing they were untouchable. But in a village where ancient beliefs still held sway, where the spirits of wronged parents were said to walk among the living, their actions would not go unpunished. They didn't know it yet, but their moment of cruelty had set in motion a chain of events that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The spirits of F's parents had witnessed everything, and their vengeance would be terrible to behold. News travels fast in small villages, spreading like wildfire through whispered conversations at the market, during afternoon gatherings, and in the shadows of doorways. Within days of the assault, rumors began to circulate about F, but the truth had become twisted, distorted by jealousy and malice. "Did you hear?" women would whisper behind their hands. "F has been visiting all the corp members." The story grew more vicious with each retelling. Those who had once praised her academic achievements now shook their heads in disapproval. The same villagers who had attended her parents' funeral and promised to look after her now turned their backs, choosing to believe the worst about the orphan girl. Young girls who had once envied F's beauty and intelligence seized the opportunity to tear down her reputation. "She's always at their quarters," they would say, conveniently forgetting how she had helped them with their studies. No wonder she was getting such good grades. The cruel irony of their words cut deep into F's already wounded spirit. Walking through the village became an ordeal. Eyes followed her everywhere, accusing, judging, condemning. The market women who had once slipped extra vegetables into her bag now turned away when she approached their stalls. Children who had looked up to her as a role model were pulled away by their mothers, as if her perceived shame might be contagious. At school, the whispers grew louder. Students would fall silent when she entered a room, only to burst into poorly concealed giggles when she passed. Her desk would sometimes be marked with cruel words, and her books would mysteriously disappear, only to be found later in the dirt outside. Even some teachers who should have known better seemed to believe the rumors, their faces showing disappointment rather than concern for their one-star pupil. Val tried to protect her, but his defense only seemed to fuel the rumors. See, people would say, even now he's taking her side. They must all be involved. His genuine concern for her welfare was twisted into something sordid by wagging tongues. One particularly harsh morning, after finding her school uniform torn and dirty outside her door, F made her decision. In the quiet hours before dawn, while the village still slept, she packed a small bag with what little she had, some clothes, her mother's old necklace, and the last prize she had won at school before her parents' death. She took one final look around the home where she had once been so happy, tears streaming down her face as she touched the walls for the last time. Nobody saw her leave. She slipped away like a shadow, choosing the narrow path behind the village that led to the main road. As the first rays of sun touched the horizon, F was already far from the place she had once called home, carrying nothing but her wounds, her shame, and a fierce determination to survive. The village woke to find her gone, her small house empty, her desk at school vacant. Some felt a pang of guilt, wondering if they had judged too harshly. Others shrugged, saying good riddance, but none knew where she had gone or what fate awaited her on the lonely road she had chosen. Life had seemed to continue normally for Colonel Faye and Dio after they completed their service year. They returned to their city lives, their memories of F and their cruel actions fading like an unpleasant dream. Each had found success in their own way, believing they had escaped any consequences for what they had done in that small village. Kunlo was the first to feel the cold touch of fate. He had landed a prestigious position at a major bank, ironically the very kind of job F had once dreamed of. His career was soaring, promotion after promotion, praise from his superiors, an office with a view of the city skyline. Then, one morning, without warning or explanation, his world crumbled. "Pack your things," his boss said flatly, placing a termination letter on his desk. "Your services are no longer required." No amount of pleading or demands for explanation made any difference. It was as if an invisible hand had reached out and swept away everything he had built. Other banks mysteriously rejected his applications, and soon, the man who had once walked the corridors of power found himself unable to even secure an entry-level position. Faye's downfall came more gradually, but with equal inevitability. It started with a persistent cough that no doctor could explain. Then came the weakness seeping into his bones like cold water. His once robust frame began to waste away, his skin taking on a sickly pallor. Hospital after hospital, test after test, yet no diagnosis could be found. Traditional medicine, modern treatments, alternative therapies, nothing helped. He watched helplessly as his strength ebbed away, haunted by dreams of a young girl's tears. But it was Dio who suffered the most devastating blow. He had built a comfortable life, surrounded by his loving family, parents, siblings, nieces, and nephews. They would gather every Sunday for family dinner, filling his home with laughter and warmth. Then came the day of the family reunion. Dio had been running late, stuck in a meeting he couldn't escape. He arrived at the gathering place to find police cars and ambulances, their lights painting the scene in surreal flashes of red and blue. The official report called it a freak accident, a gas leak, and spark, a tragedy that couldn't have been prevented. In one terrible moment, Dio lost everyone he loved. The weight of being the sole survivor crushed him, especially when he realized it had happened exactly 1 year after their attack on F. As their lives unraveled, the three men began to feel a creeping dread. These weren't merely strokes of bad luck, there was a pattern to their suffering. Late at night, when sleep eluded them, they would sometimes catch glimpses of two shadowy figures in their rooms, a man and a woman, watching them with unblinking eyes. The temperature would drop, and the air would fill with the scent of wet earth, the same smell that had hung over the village on the day of Fez's parents' funeral. Their comfortable lives had become a nightmare, and deep in their hearts, they knew why. The debt of their cruelty had come due, and the collectors would not be denied. Desperate and haunted, the three men found themselves at the doorstep of a renowned seer who lived on the outskirts of the city. The old man's hut stood apart from other dwellings, surrounded by strange totems and the pungent smell of burning herbs. They had heard whispers about his powers, how he could see beyond the veil that separated the living from the dead. The seer's eyes, clouded with age but sharp with wisdom, studied each man in turn as they sat before him on woven mats. The room was thick with incense smoke, and shadows danced on the walls from flickering candles. Kunlo, once proud and confident, now spoke with a trembling voice as he recounted their misfortunes. Faye, too weak to sit upright, leaned against the wall, his breathing labored. Dio, hollow-eyed and grief-stricken, stared at the floor. "Why are these terrible things happening to us?" Kunlo pleaded, his hands shaking as he offered the seer payment. "What have we done to deserve such suffering?" The old man closed his eyes, swaying gently as he communed with the spirits. The candles flickered violently, and a cold breeze swept through the sealed room. When he opened his eyes again, they reflected an otherworldly knowledge that made the men shrink back in fear. "You ask what you have done," the seer's voice resonated with power. "The spirits show me a young girl, her innocence shattered by your cruel desires. They show me her tears, her pain, her shame." He pointed a gnarled finger at each man in turn. "You know of whom I speak." The men's faces drained of color as understanding dawned. Dio whispered, the name falling from his lips like a confession. Yes, the seer confirmed, his voice growing darker. But it is not just her pain that calls for vengeance. 2 other spirits walk with her, her parents, taken too soon from this world. They watch from the other side, and their rage at what you did to their daughter fuels this curse. Faye began to cough violently, spots of blood appearing on his handkerchief. Is there no way to end this? He gasped between spasms. The seer's eyes softened slightly with something approaching pity. There is one way, he said. You must find the girl. Only her forgiveness can lift the curse. Her parents' spirits will not rest until she grants you mercy, or until you join them in the realm of the dead. But how can we find her? Kunal asked desperately. She disappeared years ago. Nobody knows where she went. That is your burden to bear, the seer replied, rising to indicate the consultation was over. Find her you must, or these misfortunes will seem like mere shadows compared to what awaits you. The spirits of the dead are patient, but their vengeance is eternal. The men stumbled out of the seer's hut into the harsh sunlight, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that their suffering had only begun. They had to find F, but where could they even start looking for a girl who had vanished into thin air years ago? Years after leaving the village, the 3 men found themselves retracing their steps down the dusty road they had once traveled as corps members. The village hadn't changed much, the same small market, the same mud houses, the same ancient mango tree in the village square. But they had changed, marked by their suffering and haunted by their past. They started their search at the school, now weathered and worn but still standing. The headmaster didn't recognize them at first time, and hardship had altered their faces considerably. When they mentioned F's name, his expression darkened. That poor girl, he said, shaking his head. She disappeared years ago, after he left the sentence unfinished, but his eyes held accusation. Moving through the village, they asked anyone who would listen. Some villagers turned away, refusing to speak to them. Others shared fragments of gossip, how F had vanished one morning, leaving behind an empty house and countless rumors. An old woman selling vegetables remembered her clearly. Such a bright girl, she sighed, until you people came and destroyed her life. Their search seemed hopeless until they met a young boy who mentioned corps member Val. The kind teacher, the boy said. He lives in the city now. My uncle works near his house. It was their first real lead, and they clung to it like drowning men to a rope. Following the boy's directions, they made their way to a modest house in a quiet neighborhood of the city. Their hearts pounded as they approached the door. When Val opened it, his face transformed from confusion to rage in an instant. He tried to slam the door, but Kuno caught it with his foot. Please, Kuno begged, we need to find F. We're cursed. Only she can help us. Val might have turned them away, but at that moment, a soft voice came from inside the house. Let them in, Val. The men's eyes widened as F herself appeared in the doorway, her hand resting protectively over her swollen belly. The sight of her struck them like a physical blow. She was no longer the young girl they had brutalized, but a woman carrying new life within her. Her eyes held no fear now, only a cold, steady gaze that seemed to pierce through their souls. The room fell into heavy silence as they entered. Val stood protectively near F, his hand on her shoulder. The men could hardly look at her, shame and regret washing over them in waves. Here was the girl whose life they had nearly destroyed, whose pain had called forth spirits of vengeance, whose suffering had cursed their lives. F. Faye began, his voice weak and trembling, but she raised her hand to stop him. I know why you're here, she said, her voice steady and strong. You've come because you're suffering, because you need my forgiveness. Her hand moved gently over her pregnant belly as she spoke, a reminder of life's ability to continue even after the deepest wounds. The men could only nod, tears streaming down their faces as they awaited her judgment. In the heavy silence of Val's living room, F stood before her tormentors like a queen passing judgment. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor as she considered their fate. These men who had once towered over her in their moment of cruelty now knelt before her, broken and begging for mercy. You want my forgiveness, F said, her voice calm but filled with quiet power. She looked at each man in turn. Kuno, once proud and successful, now jobless and desperate. Faye, whose body was wasting away from an illness no doctor could cure, and Dio, whose eyes held the haunted look of a man who had lost everything he loved. The spirits of my parents have been vengeful, she continued, placing both hands on her swollen belly. They couldn't protect me in life, so they chose to protect me in death. Their love for me has become your curse." The men trembled at her words, remembering the shadowy figures that haunted their nights. F moved closer to them, her presence commanding the room. "I will forgive you," she said finally, and the men's faces lit up with desperate hope. But there is a price. The hope in their eyes flickered as they waited for her terms. "You took something precious from me that day, my innocence, my trust, my peace. In return, you will never know the joy of fatherhood. No child will ever call you Papa. No baby will ever smile up at you. No son or daughter will carry your name into the future. This is my condition. Do you accept?" The weight of her words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. The men looked at each other, understanding the magnitude of this punishment. To never have children, to never know the love of father for his child, it was a profound and lasting consequence for their actions. But what choice did they have? The curse was killing them slowly, surely. Faye could feel death creeping closer with each passing day. Dio's family was already gone, and Kuno's life was in shambles. With tears streaming down their faces, they nodded their acceptance. "We accept," Kuno whispered, speaking for all of them. F closed her eyes and spoke words in an ancient dialect, words her grandmother had taught her long ago. The air in the room grew thick, then light again. The shadowy presence that had followed the men for so long seemed to lift, like storm clouds parting after rain. The curse was lifted, but its echo would remain forever. The men could feel it in their bones. The price of their forgiveness was now part of their very being. They would live, but they would never create new life. They would go on, but their family lines would end with them. As they stumbled out of Val's house into the fading daylight, they felt both relief and profound loss. They were free from the vengeful spirits, but bound by a new kind of justice, one that would remind them every day of the consequences of their actions. Behind them, F watched them go, one hand intertwined with Val's, the other resting on her belly where new life grew, untouched by the darkness of the past. In the warm embrace of early spring, F gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. As she held her daughter for the first time, tears of joy streaming down her face, Val stood beside them, his heart swelling with love for both mother and child. They named her Hope, a testament to F's journey from darkness to light, from victim to survivor. With Val's unwavering support, F refused to let her past define her future. When her daughter was just 6 months old, she made a decision that would change their lives. "I want to go back to school," she told Val one evening. "My dream of becoming a banker is still there, still burning inside me." Val smiled, unsurprised by her determination, and promised to help her every step of the way. The path wasn't easy. F would study late into the night after putting Hope to bed, her desk illuminated by a small lamp while Val graded papers nearby. There were moments of exhaustion and doubt, times when the weight of being a mother, student, and healing survivor felt overwhelming. But F persevered, drawing strength from her daughter's innocent laughter and Val's steady presence. Her hard work paid off. F graduated with honors, her academic excellence catching the attention of several banks. The day she walked into her first job interview, wearing a crisp suit and carrying a briefcase, just as she had dreamed of as a young girl, she felt her parents' spirits smiling down on her. She was offered the position on the spot. Years passed, and F's career flourished. She rose through the ranks, her intelligence and determination earning her respect and admiration. The little girl who had once sat in a village classroom, dreaming of tall buildings and important meetings, was now living that reality. She had an office with a view of the city, wore elegant clothes, and helped people manage their money, everything she had once told her parents she would do. Meanwhile, the 3 men lived with the consequences of their actions. They would sometimes see children playing in parks and feel the weight of their punishment. Kuna would watch his siblings' children grow, knowing he would never experience such joy. Faye, though recovered from his illness, lived a solitary life, his house empty of the sounds of little feet. Dio, who had lost his entire family, would never have the chance to build a new one. But F's story had become one of triumph rather than tragedy. She and Val married in a simple ceremony, with little Hope as their flower girl. Together, they built a home filled with love, laughter, and the kind of peace F had thought she'd lost forever. Their daughter grew into a bright, compassionate young girl, unaware of the dark path that had led to her existence. On quiet evenings, F would sometimes stand at her office window, looking out over the city lights. She thought of her parents whose spirits had sought justice for her. She thought of Val, whose love had helped her heal. She thought of Hope, whose very existence was proof that light could emerge from darkness. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that she had not just survived, she had won.